next speaker is. Thank you, Erke, for the presentation. The next presenter is Professor Levan Khetaguri from the Arts Research Center of Georgia, Gurdjieff Institute, Tbilisi. His presentation's title is Gurdjieff and Tbilisi. Professor Khetaguri, welcome at the panel.
Thank you. I just start with the last question to respond about the cars, because I had experience working there quite often, and this church still exists in the city. It's a Russian Orthodox church, because Gurdjieff attending the lessons in this Russian Orthodox church. If I'm not wrong, it's after Alexander Nevsky, and it's turned into the mosque. It's not act as Orthodoxal church, and it's closed. It's not open for the public. I have chance to visit because they open for us, and they made a lot of pictures of this church. I wasn't prepared just to share with you, but it was in 2000, and after next 3 years we visited Kars, because we have quite many co-projects with them. Today I would like to share with you some of the ideas and some of our experience, and during these 2 days we discussed a lot of academic approach and a lot of comments about Gurdjieff works, and a lot of sharing of different experiences and approach to the heritage. But what I would like to share with you, it's my experience and the emotions, and I deeply believe that remarkable way of Gurdjieff's teaching is dialogue, toasts, exercises. The majority of the people in this hall have their own experience and their own relationship with the teacher. My relationship begins strangely, since school days. I always remember from my mother about Mikhail Kveselava. If I am not mistaken, about the first publication about Georgy Gurdjieff, published in 1961 or 64. And I also would like to comment that when we talk about Georgy Ivanovich, it's not very correct, because in Caucasus we never use father names, and also the pronunciation of George or George, it's not very adequate, because I don't believe that in Caucasus somebody will call George in 19th century, and to keep the authenticity, it is better to call Georgy Gurdjieff without Ivanovich and all these things. This publication was during Soviet Union. Moreover, there was a legend that Kveselava, who was one of the young translators at the Nuremberg trials, brought a small suitcase with him, which contained documents about Gurdjieff. Already when I was student, I learned that Peterborough with its Georgia were related to Serge Gurdjieff's lost library. Already as a student, while working on Shakespeare and British theater, I was researching the origin of theater, which was usually connected with rituals as esotericism, with cultural experience, and of course almost all the reformers of 20th century theater were somehow connected with Gurdjieff. His name raised again now in myth and legends as opposed to theater practitioners, and then my personal experience was to hand printed his texts on a typewriter, more than 1,000 pages. The first introduction with printed copy of book was with meeting with remarkable man, when my connection with Gilgamesh and him completely coincided. I always started the theater history course with Gilgamesh with my students. In the early 90s, information was very rare, and I also had to go to different people, conduct interviews, and those collect information. For almost 10 years, the process of accumulation was being prepared in me, which in addition of accumulation turned into unique state, which without planning and completely accidentally followed me to Gurdjieff's places, starting from Kars and Ani in Turkey and ending with Mongolia and countries in between. With whirling dervishes, Waldorf centers, with the first articles and preparation for the conference in 1998-9, during which we contacted Peter Brook, Grotowski, and Sam Shepard in the United States, it still took a long time to come to the results. Along the imperial knowledge, unique emotions and sensations were accumulating in me, which strengthened the virtual, sacral, and astral connection with Gurdjieff's past life, where these were countries, cities, and diverse places that are still in Tbilisi, where I have been thousand times even before I found out that it was connected with Gurdjieff. That's why, after this short introduction, I decided to talk about Tbilisi is a city with which Gurdjieff had a special connection since his youth. The sacredness of Tbilisi, esotericism, the alchemy in history, Sufism as way of life, the inspiration for the struggle of magician in squares, as a dialogue of cultures and civilizations. We cannot avoid to talk about it and his first inspirations, esoteric inspirations, while watching a Yazidi circle ritual. The ruins of this temple and this street are still in Tbilisi today. Almost all the building which was associated still exist. A crossroad. This is why I am speaking today and telling you about the place of Tbilisi Gurdjieff's life. About Gurdjieff, a Greek by father, Armenian by mother, and with family name in translation from Persian, Gurdjieff means Kartveli, Georgian, but there is no connection with ethnicity. Tbilisi is a unique urban crossroad of cultures and civilizations. Crossroads, according to classical fairy tales, also we must look for a mythological sacred roots. A person involved in a journey, on the other hand, for lovers of travel and adventure or aventurists, finds himself at a crossroad during his journey, where, as a rule, there are three options in front of you, and no matter where you go, you cannot turn back. Also, from the first direction, you have already come to this crossroad yourself and have become the center of the universe. The mythological crossroads is the opportunity to begin initiation, to make a choice, and only the person who has set out in the path of truth can do it. Your entry into any path is the beginning of initiation and the warning that you will not be able to turn back or you will die. Has an esoteric meaning, meaning that after initiation a person dies in his original form and you can never return to old form, to your old state. Starting movements as crossroads, from a crossroads as a way of your transformation. Tbilisi is a crossroad. Tbilisi, in occult history, the wars or races took place in the Caucasus, and after the victory of the white race, the beginning began right here. That's why it's no longer accidental to refer to the white race as Caucasian. With the strengthening of secret orders and schools, it is becoming increasingly important who will have control on Tbilisi. And today it is clear that in the early Middle Ages, Georgia, the flag of Jerusalem, stonemasons or European knights, crusaders, European Christian mysticism, Neoplatonism, and Muslim mysticism, Sufism must have seriously crossed in Tbilisi. Tbilisi should be considered in Georgia as an urban center of European and Asian type, where artisans, guilds of so-called hamkrepi, in translation from Persian, it's doing together, like trade union of artisans and craftsmen, are seriously developing. In PowerPoint, I just have images, no text, and we can stop here and I try to then use the images. And it's quite important to underline that the old trade unions started from Greece, and the first trade unions was the actors union. And then later in Europe, we have development by craftsmen and by others. But in Tbilisi, it's quite interesting because so-called Amkrebi, the unions, they belong very strictly with the ideas of the Sufis, and the Sufi ideas was kind of part of the life. Um, it seems that Sufi ideas and dervishes themselves were established in Tbilisi reality in the early Middle Ages. In Tbilisi way of life, something like wine, duduk, and woman. It was kind of main concept of the living. And of course, toast makings, special meals rich with food, wine, conversations, Last Supper. In Georgia, you can find that the so-called dinners, it's quite rich, a lot of food which you can't use. And very often when people ask why you use so many food, the answer is, of course, it's not for the common days, but historically, because Georgia, like Armenia and most Caucasians, every day have struggle and wars to like against different enemies. They have the idea that any suffer might be lost. It must be quite rich. Maybe this is last time in your life, and this is also the concept of the Georgian dinner, also the conversations, which turn into a very philosophical conversations. And this is, of course, recall of ancient Greek traditions. Um, Also, very typical figures of Tbilisi, it's Arachorelli and Pinto. This is very interesting. This is flex what I try to mention before. You can find the development of uh, Georgian flag, and here in this slide you can see the dress of typical citizens of 19th century. This is time when Gurdjieff starts his first connection with Tbilisi, and also in this weir you can find a lot of elements of the Sufis, because also the head, also the Christian. But what is very interesting, I just will quote explanation of Arachorelli. This is main craftsmen presenting the city guild of trade unions, and in his dress there is element of the black and silk, and what is most interesting that um, in this dress they always wear the silver details, and with this it was that in case if Arachorelli died, he must have always some kind of treasure with him which will solve his expenses to be buried. uh, Crossing European and Eastern traditions, the master takes the student. His baptized initiation, blessing as a master, flags are a mix of these traditions. And here you can see the flags of the Georgian museums. They have very rich collection of flags of different crafts, artisans, unions. And each flag, it's kind of storytelling of profession and development and so on. Um, the source of Sufism entry must have been Persian, the Arab traditions. It's happened not only through the Silk Road, but also directly through the settlement of Persians and dervishes in Tbilisi. In the Tbilisi worldview, poverty, enjoying life, became a serious tradition, which was formed into a Georgian stereotype, especially in recent centuries. Also, Tbilisi was not completely monogamous Georgian, but all foreigners know Georgia primary through Tbilisi. We should not rule out possibilities that trade was generally considered shameful in Georgia, especially seeking more profit than necessary for survival. There are many same examples of this in the life of Sufi saints, which greatly hindered in country economic development. It is not a coincidence that the multicultural Bohemia of Tbilisi was opposite by monogamous Bohemia of Kutaisi, which was old capital of country. And eventually, with the Soviet government, Tbilisi culture also became much more monogamous, not by ethnic statistic, but by their self-expression. The confrontation between Gurdjieff and local artistic groups, uh, quite interesting in the documentations which you can find in newspapers. Um, of course, it's important to underline that when Gurdjieff arrived in Tbilisi at the beginning of 20th century, but we know that there was several times when he come to country. First of all, when he was young, he was sent to Tbilisi to study at the theological school. As we know, he can't get entry examinations, and he singing in the choir of seminarium, and this was time when he met with Stalin, and they start their friendship. This friendship was for quite long time, and with documentations which we have, I can tell you that we have quite many documents now, because working more than 20 years on this topic, we find quite interesting facts, and our institute working on main idea to keep uh, timeline and documentation regarding him. um, I think to present you more about the struggle of magician, but the time didn't give opportunity to go into the details. But I think after conference publication, you can find all this research, the connection between performing arts development and the struggle of magicians. Because on my point of view, it's quite important part of Gurdjieff's life, his relation with performing arts and the way of expressions of performing arts. Because usually we talk a lot about his texts, we talk about movements, less we talk about his interest to present some kind of performances. And Tbilisi was also interesting because it was place where three families meet with each other. This is Gurdjieff's family together with wife, Salzman and Hartmann. And this is historical meeting because in some publications you can find that the institute was founded in Esenduki, which is quite wrong, because in Esenduki was group meeting with absolutely different title. And if you take in account the Hartmann's memoirs, you can find out that Hartmann write about the evening when three families have dinner together and they create the name of the institute in country. And also quite important that Gurdjieff was introduced to Steiner system and arrhythmics in Tbilisi, because in 1918, when Salzmann come back from Germany, from Hellerau, where he was founder together with Dalcroze of Institute of Rhythmic, they bring arrhythmics to Tbilisi. And later, when Gurdjieff arrived, he was invited to Salzmann's so-called school, was introduced with the technique, and then they decided to work together. Quite important that the historical posters, of course, this is images of families, but I will now go to yes, the historical image of the poster. Of course, this is in Russian, in original way how it was presented in Tbilisi newspapers and the concert. It was two parts. The first part was rhythmic by Dalcroze, and second part was Gurdjieff's movements. And of course, it's important that idea to create struggle of magicians, which was first announced in Moscow newspapers in 1916, but later was developed in Tbilisi because officially Gurdjieff signed contract with Tbilisi Opera Theater to make this production on the stage. And in presentation, we know that opera allowed him special space where he start rehearsal Salzman create set, and also the costumes which still used by the movements was created for the struggle of magicians. It was designed by Salzman and it is still kept. Of course, the production never was realized, and still a lot of things around this production. Gurdjieff working during 1 year in Tbilisi. What is more interesting and not very well known that he not only run movements and his school, but he also teach around 60 actors. He teach most of the first generation of the actors of National Theatre, and it was quite interesting connections. And forward, it was quite important to find out how these people continue their work. And because there is not too much time now, I will very briefly tell about the institute. I know the time out, but I think to share, please don't rush, because I think to share this information more important than just to keep timelines. If you gave me chance, I will share with you. In the last session, yes? No, no, I will finish if it's possible. Yeah. Uh, our institute starting its activity at the beginning of 2000. First conference we do in 2007, which was supported by Vatican, Italian, and American embassies, with quite big presence of foreign representatives. And in 2019, we officially opened the institute because we celebrated 100 year of institute. We run quite different programs. Here you can find also historically the drawings by Salzman for the struggle of magicians. And we run publications, translations, workshops, music concerts. Our activities supported by UNESCO International Theatre Institute. One of the founders is Grotowski Institute. We organized exhibitions, and also quite important that we also create the map of all venues in Tbilisi which belongs to Gurdjieff till now exist. And we also have special tours for the guests. Sometimes include cars, but mostly focused on Georgia itself. And several publications with academic approach, because in our publications and translations we try give very serious attention to the commentary part, not only just it's a pure text but also commentary. I can tell you that in Georgian language translated all works of Gurdjieff by different publishing houses. You can find all of these texts, and at the end I will tell you that we working. Yes, here we have the Highline exhibition, some exhibition, and finally I will let you know that our institute working to create a center which will focus on a practice, and now it's under the construction. The first building it's ready. It will be ready at the end of the year. The rest it's in construction work, and in few years it will be ready. Digital library, small museum, amphitheater, and it will be placed for informal education and non-traditional practices. And if you interested, you can visit our Facebook where we have also some video materials, or you can write to us. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you for Professor Khetaguri, the presentation. We have very, unfortunately, only for one question time now. So who has now a question? If no question, then we can go for the next presentation. Thank you very much. It is from Avetik Melik Sargisian. Imkácichov. Hima Hayeren